Well, hello, jazz fans, and welcome to Jazz Chat with David Friesen. This happens every Friday, and though I can't see you out there, I'm hoping that you are out there, and I want to welcome you. Today's special guest, as a young person I met, I think when he was probably 16, 17 years old, the son of a very good friend of mine, Van Lees. This young man is an extraordinary pianist, not only jazz-wise, but also classically trained. His jazz playing has just expanded greatly over the last few years that I've known him. He just graduated from the University of North Texas State, of which he was a member of the 1 O'Clock band. And this is going to be a real force to reckon with as time goes on. He will be noted as one of the great jazz pianists, I'm sure. Would you please welcome our special guest, Paul Lees. Hello, Paul.
Hi, David. Well, thank you so much for that very kind introduction. It's really an honor to be here doing this interview with you. You're somebody that I've looked up to for so many years, so this is a real honor.
Is that because I'm taller than you, or what?
That's right. Both.
Paul, you just came back from Brazil. Is that?
I did. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that trip. Was it a musical trip? Did you hear any jazz while you were down there? What's going on with the pandemic? And
yeah,
were people allowed to play music in clubs, or what's going on?
While I was there, I didn't get a chance to hear any live music. I think, at least from the sense that I got, I don't think a whole lot of concerts are going on there right now. But I was able to, a friend of mine who lives there, shared some Brazilian bands with me, just, played me some of their music. And they had a lot of wonderful bands down there, but I was never able to go out and hear any live music, which I wish I would have been able to.
Or sit in or anything like that.
No, but I would have loved to do something like that. But
Paul, when did you start playing piano? How old were you?
I was 4 when I first started.
Wow.
And
what kind of things were you playing then at the age of 4? Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? Or?
Basically, that's exactly right. Yeah, my dad, since he's a musician as well, he knows enough piano that he could kind of get me started. He showed me some basic chords to play, like here's a 1 chord, here's a 4 chord, here's a 5 chord. He showed me how to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Stars. But I'm not sure, there's something inside of me that wanted to play the piano, because I was the one that approached my parents at that age saying, I'd like to learn how to play the piano. And we didn't have the piano at our house at that time. But the church my dad pastors, there was a piano up there. So for the first couple years, he would just take me up there a couple times a week and give me little piano lessons. And then when I was 6 or 7 is when we actually got a piano in the house. And I got really serious with practicing then.
Was it classical that you first started playing, or was it jazz?
It was classical. I had heard, when I was a little kid, I had heard Fur-Elise and Minuet in G, and just really loved those Beethoven pieces. And those were kind of the motivation that got me really practicing, because I wanted to get to the point where I could actually play those pieces. And so I started out just doing classical, Beethoven and Chopin and Bach and Mozart. And then when I was 11 or 12, I think I was 11, I started doing some jazz lessons. Because it was with the trumpet player, actually. But he knew enough piano that he kind of got me started at the beginning. But I was hearing my dad play in the house, heard him listening to Horace Silver albums and Charlie Parker albums, and I was like, I want to learn how to do this too. I don't want to just do classical.
Yeah.
And it was hard at first because I was used to doing, straight eighth notes and classical, and it was hard for me to get the swing rhythm at first, but then just fell in love with it.
The more you listen to the music, you can't really play it before you hear it. You need to really listen to this, don't you, to ingest that feeling, that 2/4
Absolutely.
feeling. But as you well know, starting out on classical is so important because it teaches you to get a sound out of the instrument. Is that
Right.
correct? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, so often nowadays, when I listen to, sometimes people who are fellow students at UNT or just jazz players in the area, sometimes you can hear if somebody has some good classical training. They
Yeah.
might be great jazz players, but you can usually hear based on the sound whether they've had some classical training.
Yeah. Here's kind of an interesting thing I'd like to interject, that your dad, who I think he gets better and better and better. He's a wonderful alto player
Yeah.
in the real bebop sense of the word.
Right.
And he was a student of mine when he was 17 years old. He was in my combo at the Jamie Ebersole camp. And then when you were 17 years
Yep.
old, you were also in my
Pretty amazing.
combo. I didn't realize time had passed me by like that.
Well, if you wait long enough, David, maybe eventually my son will. If I have a son someday.
Stop.
That's right.
Do you have a chance to play with your dad? I know we go to the Ukraine each year,
Right.
and we have this wonderful trio. It's in solo, duets, trio combinations that we play at in Kiev, and this is wonderful. But other than that, do you and your dad have a chance to play together?
We don't. I wish we had a chance to more. The only times that we get to play together is when I'm up visiting my parents in St. Louis.
Okay.
And I'm only able to, just because of my schedule, and there's a church that I play at here in the Dallas area in Denton, and it's just harder to get away for an extended period of time. So I'm usually only at home a couple times a year. So we only get to play together then.
Your dad doesn't live in St. Louis, but St. Charles. Is that right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the church he pastors is in St. Charles, and then they live in St. Peter's.
Yeah, I might add that Paul's father is a Christian minister. Is wonderful the way he preaches, and the thing I love about Paul's dad is that he lives the word.
Mhm.
His compassion for people and respect is really tremendous to watch. It's very uplifting. Paul, what reasonable goals have you set for yourself, like for the future? Are you working on a CD project, or what do you have your own band, or what's going on?
Yeah. Well, my plan, at least right now, we'll see how the Lord leads, but my plan is to move to Nashville in about 2 or 3 years. Because for several reasons, I'd like to get into doing more recording work. Um, and also Nashville is closer to St. Louis. So it would put me closer to my family, which would be nice to see them more often. But also Nashville is where a lot of the Christian contemporary music is recorded. And I'd like to get into doing some more of that stuff. And there's also a lot of great jazz in Nashville too. So it kind of has everything that I would want to do.
You don't think of Nashville as a jazz place. You think New York
Right,
and Chicago
right,
and LA, probably
right.
more jazz, but you think of Nashville as country, right? West Coast
Exactly,
country.
right. A lot of country, but there's almost all, at least as far as I'm aware, most of the Christian contemporary music is recorded there. Um, and it's also just in terms of a financial perspective as well. It's a lot cheaper to live there. So it'd be easier for me to move there and get a house or and be a little more stable there. And also the professor who was my jazz piano professor at UNT, the last couple of years of my schooling. He's from Nashville, or he lives in Nashville now. So I had some good connections there. Um, but in terms of current things I'm working on, I've been working on writing a lot lately. And my goal is to put out, at least by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, an EP, an extended play of 6 or 7 songs that I've written, more kind of in the Christian contemporary music genre. But I've also been working on writing some jazz stuff as well, and would like to release an EP or album of that at some point too.
Who's some of your main influences
Yeah.
on the piano? Who are some of your main influences on the piano?
I would definitely, if I in my top 4 or 5, I'd have to put Chick Corea. I just love his playing and his playing and his writing. His compositions are so good. I love Keith Jarrett. I love Kenny Barron. Bill Evans. Just love his grasp and understanding of harmony. Those would probably be my top 4 of my favorite people.
So your goal, if I'm understanding right now, is not to really pursue a career as a traveling jazz musician playing that creative art form as a whole, and to intensify it with advanced harmony and things like that. You know, it's more going into more, am I right in saying, like kind of pop Christian oriented music? Is that right?
A little bit, but I also still want to do jazz. I still want to have that be a big part of my career. My piano professor at UNT that I was mentioning, who lives in Nashville, Pat Coyle, I really like kind of the way his career trajectory went, because he's always played jazz throughout his entire career, releasing jazz albums and you know, working with different jazz artists. But then he's also done a lot of recording work. He plays in Michael McDonald's band. So he's kind of had a kind of broad swath of things that he's done. And I love jazz so much because I love its creativity. I love its freedom. It's so much fun just to go into a gig or a performance and not really know what's going to happen and find out on the spot. Yeah. So I never want to lose that part at all, or not pursue that really strongly. Yeah. It's still what I work on the most.
Well, you have the chops, you know, the technique to be able to probably do anything you want to do, which is a good thing. You're living in Dallas right now. Yeah. You're a graduate of the University of North Texas State in Denton, and you're working down there. What about the pandemic that's hitting the rest of us here in America? Like, I'm in Portland, Oregon. All the jazz clubs are closed. Right. There is no playing other than live stream, which I've been doing once or twice a week. What's happening in Dallas?
Yeah, well, we were hit by it too. The first couple months of the pandemic, you know, March to mid-May of last year, everything was completely shut down. The only thing that I was doing was playing for the live stream at my church, because during those 2 months, you know, we didn't have any public services. We just had a live stream that we were doing with a praise team and rhythm section, and then the pastor. So that was the only thing that was kind of keeping me going. It was the only thing I was working on outside of sitting at home practicing. But then in mid-May, you know, some things kind of gradually opened up. A lot of the bars were still closed, and even now, some of the bars are only kind of just completely opening back up. There's a club here in Dallas called the Balcony Club that just kind of opened back up. So a lot of like the jazz small group type gigs, those weren't happening as much. Yeah. But a lot of the private events like weddings and things like that were still happening towards the end of last year. So that's where I was able to get some work.
I've heard you use the word the Lord,
yes,
leading you. Do you ever, I'm assuming you're a Christian.
Absolutely.
not because just using the word Lord, but I've observed
Right.
you and know as Van's son, your commitment to Christ in your life. Do you ever get judgments from the church who say, well, how can you as a Christian play in clubs,
Mm.
bars?
No, thankfully not. The church that I go to is it's filled with musicians, and so there's very much an understanding of what we need to do to make a living, um, and also the gigs that I do. They're some of them are at bars and things like that, but they're not at, I'm not playing at strip clubs or something like that. It's not. They're more, it's usually jazz clubs or restaurant or a bar or things like that. So there's very much an understanding of the people around me at the church that this is music, this is what you do for a living. So there's not a legalistic viewpoint there.
I wrote a lecture series entitled The Christian Musicians, and it's
Yeah.
written specifically for Christian musicians. And there's a missionary in Japan who's a Japanese bass player, and it's being translated into Japanese. He's translating the whole thing. He wanted to do it
Wow.
for the Japanese musicians. I didn't know if you were aware of this or not, but
I wasn't.
a lot of times Christians have to really go through the obstacle course of judgments from the church and everything. Paul, I forgot to mention at the beginning of this interview that there was going to be a surprise for our viewers. It's not the kind of surprise where they're going to receive any money. So please, folks out there, don't get your hopes up.
Aww.
But what it is what I'm going to ask you now to do, to bring our interview to a conclusion. I would like to have you share with people that are listening, people that will hear this interview, a message of hope, a message of hope for the future that will help people deal with their lives and what they're experiencing right now.
Yeah. Why? I'll go back to, I'm going to go back to, since I'm a Christian, I'm going to speak from the Christian perspective. I recognize that some of your viewers who are watching this video might not be Christians, but I hope you'll consider it because it's true. And I think the thing that I find very hopeful is that even in the midst of everything that's going on, God hasn't left his throne. He's still on his throne. He's still in control. He has an infinitely wise plan that is beyond what we could ever hope to understand. And he knows better than us what to do. And he hasn't forgotten about us. And I find that very, very comforting as a Christian to know that he is in control, and that what other things I might be dealing with in my own life, because being a Christian doesn't mean all your problems go away. Knowing that he's in control is incredibly comforting. I always think of Romans 8:28, and we know that God works all things together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. And that's very, very comforting to me.
That's a scripture from the New Testament, correct?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people might not believe in God. And,
right.
And is there anything that you can share with a person other than speaking about God? Is there any hope that you can offer a person who might be atheistic?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest, or I think the thing that I'll say this, I think that life often presents different challenges, and sometimes it's things we expect, sometimes it's things we don't expect. like this pandemic. None of us expected this pandemic was going to happen. And it's not a good thing. It's not enjoyable. It's not easy. But the best thing that we can do as individuals is to try to turn things that at the moment are bad or might seem bad, try to turn them into positives. I know with the pandemic, even though I lost a lot of work and it was not fun sitting at home all the time, it did give me an opportunity to practice more. It gave me an opportunity to write more. I know
Yeah, I've never practiced so much in my whole life.
oh, right. I know a lot of people, it gave them more time to spend with their families.
Yeah.
And so there are many bad things that came out of the pandemic.
Right.
But I think it's important to think about the positives because
Accentuate the
yeah,
positive, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
You know, I didn't get to talk to you about Nigeria. I know Bright Gain brought you over there like he brought me over there to teach at the school. And I know that must have been a great experience for
It
you.
was.
We didn't get a touch on a lot of things. You have so much in your life. Hopefully the fans have who are listening have learned a little bit about you, and they're going to probably be aware of you as your credits and things are put on the final lecture about you, and hopefully you'll get more fans from this interview. Thank you, Paul, very much for sharing about your life and about the music and about the way you're thinking. The jazz music future is in good hands, and it looks like the Christian pop area is going to be a good, because you'll probably introduce some jazz voicings too.
Exactly. There you exactly.
Which they I think desperately need.
Right. A little extended harmony. Here's some extended harmony here.
Yeah.
No, well, David, thank you. This was, you know how much I think of you, and you've been such a big influence in terms of my playing progressing and getting to play your music. And so thank you so much for having me on here to talk.
Well, it's been a pleasure. And to my fans that have dialed in to Jazz Chat with David Friesen, thank you very much. And I will look forward to seeing you all next Friday when we will have a very special guest. Thanks again, and be well, be healthy, and God bless you all. Bye-bye.